Harry Ferguson. He made this tractor and he made a lot of things. When they made his tractor, he made it do everything, but he didn't make a place for a walking stick. See, I can't walk down to my bees, so I put my bee box on the back, and this is my wheels for going down to my bees. I was born out at Myrtle, past Billside. My father was head gardener there. Then when I was 5, we moved here. And I've been here ever since. I've been here for 90 years. We 10-acre here, and we grew vegetables. At that time, the tractor wasn't to go, it was just horse, you know. And I've ploughed this garden many times. And we also had ground down below, so there's a lot happened in my lifetime. What we don't have, we make, if we can't get it. All my machinery is getting past the time where you get parts. So, look what's in here. Father had bees, but I didn't have much to do with the bees when Father had bees. I had pheasants, fancy pheasants, golden pheasants, Amherst, Reeves, melanistic, you name it, I had them, you know. And then, for some reason, people discovered there was, and they started to get them stolen. And then my father passed away, and I thought, well, I'll start beekeeping. So I went to a sale out at Glenkindie and bought a hive of bees. Cost me £20, which was quite a lot of money in those days. And basically, from there on, just self-taught. So that was about 52 years ago. And I've still got bees. So, and I get honey every year, so I must be doing something right.
So we're at Tarland Bee Group Apiary. It's part of Tarland Development Group, and there's a seed swapping facility, orchard facility for apple pressing, and then the bee group. And we have hives here that after we've done our winter beekeeping courses, when we will teach people how in the classroom the skills of beekeeping, then we'll bring them here in the spring and teach them the practical skills of beekeeping. So they'll all get to go in the hive and we'll teach them the basics. So, and then through the summer there'll be a mentoring program, so they'll all keep coming back and learn how to keep bees for themselves. The other apiary is for if they decide they would like to try and keep bees, but they are a bit worried about the costs or if it's really for them, then they can lease a hive from us and keep it up at the other apiary, and that just gives them a year or so to try it without having the expenditure outlay for themselves. So it's a great way, and then if they decide this really isn't for me, it's too time consuming or I'm a bit scared or for whatever reason, they just give it back to Tarland Bee Group. So it's a great way to start beekeeping. I'm one of the committee members, so during the winter months I help run the classroom sessions, and then during the summer months I help with the mentoring. This year obviously has been slightly different because of COVID, so there hasn't really been the mentoring. We've just done what we can, but it's been very, distanced. So it's been a different year, not ideal at all. Well, Royal Deeside, as we call it, runs from, because of the royal connection obviously, runs from Braemar up in the hills all the way to Aberdeen. So it follows the course of the Dee. It's wild landscape, but there's, like in Tarland, there's a very good village community. So you can get involved in all sorts of things. There's a bike park, a community garden. It's great for the kids growing up. They don't have the same pressures that they do in big cities. And for beekeeping, of course, it's fantastic because we've got all these wonderful heather sites, but we're close enough to move our bees to oilseed rape as well. So it's got everything. It's just a fantastic place to live. So I started beekeeping when Tarland Bee Group first started in 2013. I did the classes, I did the programme, and then I became a bit obsessed and I went to every beekeeping course there was. Some of them I went to twice. And then a few years ago a local beekeeper passed away, so me and a couple of friends took on his hives, and now it's just grown and grown. So now we're up to about 80 hives. So yeah, it's a bit mad, but it's fantastic and I love it. completely different to what I used to do. So it started as a hobby and it's now becoming a business, hopefully. Whether it's a business that ever makes any money, I don't know. I've got 4 kids and they ended up coming to the beekeeping classes when I first started because they were too young to be left at home. So if I couldn't get childcare, they would come with me, and then actually they ended up loving it too. So they all do it. Martin, the youngest, does it most.
I became a beekeeper in 2000. I was made redundant, and I wanted to be sure that I'd have something to do with my time while I was looking for jobs. So the 2 things I did, I got some bees. I bought some bees from a well-known beekeeper, Jock McGregor, 2 Smith hives, which is a hive that's pretty well unique to Scotland. And I got these 2 hives of bees and stuck them in the garden. And my daughter, who was aged 8 or 9 at the time, helped me with the bees. And I got 1 or 2 pictures of her with the bees with me. And they were quite happy at the bottom of the garden. And the other thing I did when I was made redundant, I bought woodworking machinery, and I made my first 5 hives. So I made my first hive, cedar wood hives, from scratch, basically. And many of those hives 20 years later are doing very well. My father kept bees, so I guess that was one thing that put it into my mind. And it was only later that I learned that my grandfather also kept bees, and he in fact started up a bee unit in a research centre called Rothamsted down in south of England. He was the first bee scientist in this centre, and I only learnt about this maybe 10 years ago, and it was a pity I didn't know him and know about his beekeeping at the time, because he wouldn't have let me go close to them, I shouldn't think. But it's probably in the blood, beekeeping. When the association first came into existence back in 1910, the way it got on was because there was a good liaison between the beekeeping department of the local college, Northern College, and the Beekeeping Association. And the bees were actually kept at Crabestone, which is where the college was. We had to move out of there in 2007, and we moved here in 2014. But because there were a lot of very experienced both beekeepers and scientists there, it worked together. It worked very well together as a symbiosis. There's a number of very prominent beekeeping books that have arisen from the college at Crabestone. We've got a couple here which actually came from a beekeeper. This one here is by Bernard Mobius, who is one of the research scientists at the Crabestone College, and he specialised in the native honeybee. His interest was specifically the native honeybee and how to breed bees which are close to the native honeybee and more suitable to this area. So that's Bernard Mobius.
Mr. Mobius used to be in charge there, and he was very good. And he taught a lot of things that still come to my mind to this day, you know. I remember one day somebody asked him, why do bees sting? Are me bees angry? And he said, well, if somebody took off the roof of your house, rearranged your furniture, went into your larder, you wouldn't be very happy either. And I thought it was a very good way of describing what can happen when you go into a beehive, you know.
And we've also got a couple of books. There's a chap here called Robert Couston who specialised in taking his bees to the heather, so this is a very good book for somebody who wants to take their bees to the heather.
So we're in the rural Aberdeenshire, quite near Benahee. It's August of 2020. We're well out of Aberdeen and it's a lovely day to come up into the hills. Most Scottish beekeepers will move their bees to the heather moors at this time of year. I guess originally they would bring them on a cart. Now we bring them in a car. It's much easier with a car because the hives are quite heavy to carry. The tradition of going to the heather is as old as beekeeping, and in Scotland, in northern Scotland, it's particularly strong because we have lots of heather. Beekeepers in lower lying places, like the south of England for example, envy us because they know heather honey is a good product to go for, but they don't have so much heather. So for them it would mean driving a long way. For us it's quite practical to take the bees to the heather, back home the same day, and hopefully get some heather honey.
We're on a heather moorland near Granite, which is world renowned for being one of the best places to get heather honey. So the norm in Scotland is to have to move your bees to the moors, but luckily we have an apiary at the heather all year round, which we use, and then we can just keep the bees here, so we don't have to do any mass movement of hives, which is convenient. Well, traditional heather honey should have bubbles in it, and that's what's looked for. In the olden days, they wouldn't have had modern extractors, so they had to cut out each comb from the wood and press all the honey out. But now with modern extractors, we can reuse the frames every year, so it saves the bees a lot of time having to draw the wax. So the red colour of it again. It is quite nice native pattern because there's the rugby ball shape of brood and then stores in the corner and pollen in here as well. Whereas with non-native bees, it'll just be a full frame of brood. It gets really windy up here, so the roofs will just blow off and the boxes will all slant if we don't strap them up. We have to keep the actual location of the apiaries a secret, as there's a large market for stealing bees. And this is unlike the times during the war and post-war periods where lots of people, and well, most people had bees, as you received sugar rations from the government if you kept bees.
They applied for sugar, but I think it was dyed green to feed back to the bees, you know. At one time there was over 1,000 members in the association. And there was branch secretaries even. And there would be one for D side, one for Don side. And they used to collect the subs. And they would go around their members and give them a bit of advice or sort out their problems, you know. So the numbers have come down a lot, even the past 20 years. At that time, all the gamekeepers, and I say farmers, most of them had bees. And it was 15, 20 hives, you know, where now a lot of members have just 2 hives at the bottom of the garden. I used to know all the beekeepers in the association because they also used to come here for their jars or their equipment, you know. And now I don't know any new members at all. I suppose I could count in that hand almost the ones that I remember about, you know. And I'm still in touch with, really. But times have changed.
Historically, Aberdeenshire was really strong for beekeeping, and there was dozens of local clubs all over Aberdeenshire. One of the things that caused that to reduce was that in the 90s there was a new pest arrived in the country called the varroa mite, which had a devastating effect on the bees. This came in from Southeast Asia and found its way to Britain, and quite a lot of beekeepers found that they lost the bees. They couldn't cope with this mite, and they just gave up. They went out of beekeeping altogether.
Where they came from, the varroa coexisted with the bees, the native bees in Southeast Asia. They coexisted, and they're quite happy to live together. But once the global traffic increased, they came over, and they don't live so well with our bees.
Well, obviously the varroa mite is a big problem, but if you treat and you have an integrated pest management system, then you should be okay. So you just monitor and then treat accordingly. So which is what we do. We monitor through the year, and if levels get high, then we have to treat. Just being careful that you're not treating when you've got a honey crop on.
As far as the varroa was concerned, when it came along, being a grower, I had always pests, caterpillars, bugs of some sort, cutworm, different things. So to me it was just something else that had to be dealt with, you know. And the first that we started was just smoking the hive with tobacco. But that didn't last long, and then of course it came out with chemicals. But I don't throw chemicals at my bees if they don't require it. And I don't think there's as much varroa about these days as there was originally. So I find that I just treat my bees once a year, and I've got very little varroa now.
You see that's a bee emerging there.
Today we've got queen who Martin and his brother grafted from some native bees that we were lent. So we were very fortunate to be lent these native bees. We brought them down from the north of Scotland, and they're to move down hopefully next week further into Perthshire. And we grafted from them, and this is one of the queens that is now mated. So she needs her wings clipped, or a wing clipped, and to be marked so that we can easily identify her when she goes into a hive. So that's what we're going to do today. Right, so I think it's the Apidia nearest the gate, Martin. It's funny, isn't it? And they're painted different colours, and we often draw zigzags and things on them. It's just so that when the queen comes back, well, both the queen and the workers, they know which one's home. Because it's a bit like living in a street where all the houses look exactly the same and don't have numbers on them, which one's your house. So if you paint them slightly differently, then they'll know which one's theirs. Because the last thing you want to do is her to go off on her mating flight, come back and go into the wrong one. And you end up with two queens fighting it out. So it's quite important she goes home. Okay, so this is a native queen that we're hopefully going to find and then mark and clip. These are little Apidia boxes that we use to get virgins mated. We put the virgin in here with a jam jar full of bees. Oh, bit of a roar. So we're now queen hunting. Okay, so he holds her, gets her legs between his thumb and his first finger, and then marks her thorax. We're marking our native queens pink so that we can remember where they've come from. And then he's clipping her wing. And that's it, job done. The paint will dry. she'll go back in and carry on laying eggs. But what we'll probably do is remove her and now hive her on. So we'll, oh, there's a wasp. So we clip wings just because we've got so many apiaries that when we can't get around them all, so if we do miss swarming signs and they swarm, then they'll swarm either under the hive or just in front of the hive. They won't be able to fly away. So and therefore they don't become a public nuisance and we don't lose them.
So make it up, you've got a swarm in the grass.
Okay, I'll be there in a second.
So when we arrived there was a swarm on the ground, so it obviously just come out of the hive and temporarily plopped there.
I wasn't expecting anyone here to have swarmed.
Especially behind the hive is very strange.
Yeah, it is. So it could just be a swarm that's arrived from somewhere else, because there are bees quite close by. Okay, well do that one, Martin, and then do that one, and then we'll take a decision.
What they do is scout bees go out and they find places where they want to go and live permanently, and then they all reach a collective decision, and it looks like that's what's happened now. So they've moved from over there in the grass and it seems like they're going this way. I think the queen's probably still in the grass over there. I reckon she's clipped. Looks like they're gathering there on the ground at the... People are often quite understandably scared of swarms, but they're relatively safe because before the bees leave the hive they gorge themselves on honey, and that means that they're so full that they can no longer bend their abdomens to sting you. And they also have a purpose. They've set out to do a job which is swarm, so they're not really focusing or bothered by people.
This is a skep, and this is made out of straw. This one is particularly made out of quite a fine grass, actually, not straw. But they can be made out of twigs, light twigs, long straw. This I think is rushes. I think this is a rush. But anyway, what you do when you're collecting a swarm is you get up as close to the swarm as possible, and then you'll shake a branch so that all the bees drop in there, and then you can take that away and the bees will follow where the queen is, and you put this down with a stick underneath and the bees will come in, and eventually they'll all end up inside here. Wrap it up in a sheet, put it in the back of your car and drive away with it. Cardboard box is just as good, but this is very much an artistic endeavour as well as being a very useful piece of kit. It smells very nice as well. In Scotland these are called ruskies, and in the rest of the UK they're called skeps. So rusky is the same thing.
The longer you keep bees, the more you probably understand. Although you're always learning. I've been keeping up bees all this time, and I still learn something new every year.
If I knew 10 years ago what I know now, I think I would still have started beekeeping, but I would have approached it slightly differently.
20 years and everybody has their ups and downs in beekeeping. I've lost my bees over the winter sometimes and started up again the following year. Usually silly mistakes that you look back on and think I shouldn't have done that, and do it the next year after that as well. You never learn. You never learn.
I had a friend, we used to work together, but Jimmy's no longer with us, and he used to come down at the New Year And he said, well, we've got a whole new year. We want to make the same mistakes that were made last year. I says, no, Jim, but we'll make new ones, you know.
And the trouble with beekeeping is you ask a beekeeper a question and you'll get several beekeepers a question and you'll get 5 different answers. So every beekeeper has their own point of view.
Keep your bees as close to the way that nature intended. And don't try and make the bees do what you want them to do. You do what the bees want you to do, if that makes sense. A federal colony can live in a tree or up in a church spire for years with no help from man, you know. So we actually keep bees as slaves. We capture them, put them in a box, make them work for us, and steal their honey. Okay, we feed them. We have to try and... We wouldn't feed them if it wasn't that we have to keep them alive, you know? So, and as I say, they can go away and leave you at any time. You can't put a fence around about them. They're free to go at any time.
It's kind of a passion. I don't make any money out of it. I think only if you keep a lot of bees do you make any amount of money. It's the pleasure of working with bees. Somehow it's very therapeutic to work with bees, and particularly friendly bees. But just being with them is it's good for the soul, I think. And it's rewarding because you do collect honey. It's rewarding because you're maybe helping to produce a new queen for the next year, and most of all, keeping the bees alive. And today today it's very difficult with the varroa. We've got a Bulgarian member of our association, and he was saying to me the other day, he said, you look in the mirror tomorrow morning when you wake up, Dave, and just say you are a hero. He said anybody who keeps bees in Scotland is a hero. They've got to be a hero because it's so difficult.
Robbie is back. Come, Rob. Over the years, I've had a few robins. And this one's quite tame. I had one a few years ago, and he was the same. I used to go out to the house in the morning and just cry, and before I got my tin out of my pocket, he was sitting in my hand. See, if you live with nature, this all happens. And it's the same with my bees.